Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. This, if you're not familiar, is a By the Fans, For the Fans podcast about Chicago sports and Chicago sports stars. This episode, we are going to talk about the Bears' Christmas miracle against Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Bulls not knowing any sort of identity, and the Blackhawks trying to figure things out. All this and more on this episode of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. But first off, we'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you don't know, the Rockford Ice Hogs are the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. So get to see the stars of the Blackhawks today, such as Tano Caro, Jeremy Morin, Ryan Hartman, and Marco Dano, all at a family-friendly, low, affordable price. Next home game is December 30th versus Chicago Wolves at 7 p.m. and Sunday, January 3rd, trying to avenge the last two losses to the Milwaukee Admirals with a 4 p.m. start. Only 90 minutes from the city limits and fun for the whole family. Check them out, icehogs.com. Well, we had a lot of naysayers hating on the Bears, and rightfully so. This was a bad Bears team. Didn't play so well. And you have, how many straight losses in a row going down to the last two games, seeming like the team was quitting on everybody. And they pull it together. They pull it together for a big win against the Tampa Bay Bucks, and Lovie Smith sent the Bears packing with a nice win victory, and leaving just the home game left against Detroit Lions to wrap up this season and hopefully dreams of a better next year. So let's just jump right on in. Let's start with the defense. This defense was weird. I didn't know how to put that in perspective because it wasn't the defense that we've been seeing this season so far, which is giving up some points because they're not as talented of a team as you would hope, but they're not giving up the big, huge plays in mass quantities like they have the past 2 years under Mel Tucker. But against Lovie and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they were giving up the big plays, something we haven't seen in a while. But the big story of the game was turnovers. John Timo had 2 fumble recoveries. The Bears had an interception. Fuller almost had another interception. You win the turnover battle 3-0, and you should be winning the game. But the big issue why the Bears didn't dominate this game is because they had so many costly long plays. You gave up a 29-yard run by Sims, a 50-yard catch by Sims, which had 41 yards after the catch. This is a 9-yard pass that turned into a 50-yard touchdown. And that was all brought on by poor speed underneath by the linebackers and a bad play by Porter over the top. So really, you should have had that bottled up, and that was, lack of speed and a poor decision by Porter. Then you had the 43-yard Hail Mary at the end of the game to Austin Seferian-Jenkins. All 21 of Tampa's points came on or because of big plays. They had the 50-yard touchdown pass, the 43-yard touchdown pass, and then a short field, very, very, very short field after a blocked punt. So, Tampa was only 2 of 8 on third downs and had the ball less than 23 minutes for the game. So it was an anomaly for the Bears. They felt like a dominating performance at times, but it felt like the Bears were going back to the Mel Tucker days at times. It was a really odd performance. Looking at the defensive backs, Harold Jones-Corte, best game he's ever had as a Bear, or any game as a pro. That's the type of guy that I think that Vic Fangio and John Fox and Ryan Pace think they have. And if that's the case, if that's the I think they have, and he's finally starting to slow the game down and play like that, then that looks good for the Bears' future. Or is this an anomaly in itself? Adrian Amos, this might have been his worst game as a Bear. He's been so good all season. This is the time of year when you have rookies hitting the wall anyway, because this is longer than they've ever played football in any season ever. Once they get to the NFL, because college would have been over a couple weeks ago, and so you start hitting the wall. But he was taking some bad angles, some bad coverages. There was a long pass where he just misjudged it and should have broken it up or intercepted it, but it came down for reception. So it wasn't a miserable day, but it was his worst day. Kyle Fuller looked great in coverage. Has some pass breakups. When he's playing confidently, he's a good corner, and I still really like Kyle Fuller. He's just going to have to take this off season and really reflect, because he's going into his third season, hit a sophomore slump. In this third season, that's going to be his make or break. He's got to figure it out. But he has all the tools. He's got everything. He just needs to get that confidence up. And then Porter had an awful game. It's back-to-back bad games. And you topped it with he went for a gamble on a poor angle on Sims and missed and gave up a huge touchdown pass. As a whole, the pass coverage was suspect. It looks like they were running a lot of zone defenses, and the wide receivers were sitting in the zone soft spots. They gave up several big plays. When you're playing a rookie quarterback and a second-year wide receiver, and that's really all they have, you should be playing a lot better than that. But again, this just highlights that the Bears are still several players away from being competitive with the big dogs. Linebackers, I really, honestly, and truly think this is a well-coached group. John Timu epitomizes the Bears linebacking core. I love his playmaking ability, his hard-nosed play, his football smarts. He's got great fundamentals, but he's slow. You can't teach speed. You can know what position to be in and where to go and all of that, but if you don't have the speed, you're just you're liable to get beat. That's every play. You're liable to get beat. You can always learn to be in the right position. You can learn things like that, but you can't learn speed. You're playing muscle hamster. And they did really well against him. But Doug Martin is he's one of the best running backs in the NFL. But they had a lot of no gains and tackles for loss against him. If you look at Doug Martin's numbers, he was 17 carries for 49 yards and a long of 9. If you take that's less than 3 yards a carry. That's pretty darn good. He's not a speed back. He's a big power back, and that's your big lumbering linebackers. That's what they're doing well on. But then you have Charles Sims comes in there with some speed, and he does a lot better. He had 4 carries for 45 yards with a long of 29. You take away that 29-yard carry, and he's still averaging 5 yards a carry. But a lot of that is the speed of the linebackers not being able to get to the hole fast enough. But you got to look at the positives. Is Jonathan Anderson did have a forced fumble, and Timu did have 2 recovered fumbles. And then onto the defensive line is Eddie Goldman was having himself a really good game, and he hurt his ankle, which I'm hearing is worse than it looked, but not bad enough to need surgery. So we probably won't see him again this season, which is one more game, but still, I don't think we'll see him against the Lions. The 3-4 defensive ends look suspect. Weren't filling the holes, and they were letting some plays go through on the speed plays. And Pernell McPhee just looks pedestrian out there with his knee issue. The one defensive lineman other than Eddie Goldman that was looking good is Willie Young. Willie Young looked phenomenal out there. It's like a couple weeks ago he figured out this defense all clicked to him, and he's suddenly making sense to him, and he is lights out. You can't get rid of Willie Young right now because he's the best edge rusher that you have, and that maybe when you have a healthy Pernell McPhee that changes, but with Pernell McPhee's knee as it is, Willie Young is your best edge rusher. And that's the defense in a nutshell. Is you saw a lot of big plays, and that's how Tampa got their points. And there was some mental breakdowns in there and some issues of lack of team speed. But I still think this is a well-coached team. But it's some glaring things are opening up, and Ryan Pace is going to have some interesting decisions to make. If you head over to swerskisports.com, that's SWERSKI sports.com, we posted an article up there where we kind of break down some of the Bears free agent players and what we think are going to happen, whether they're going to sign with the Bears, whether they're going to be gone, whether the Bears even want them. So check that out. We covered Porter and Matt Forte, etc. Moving on to the Bears offense. Honestly, when this game started, I thought this was going to be another situation like in the Seattle game where it was punt, 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 punt. In the first quarter, your three possessions were punt, blocked punt, and punt. The blocked punt was just to break it up a little bit. It was not looking well. And honestly, the Bears got saved when Cutler had a tipped pass for an interception by a defensive lineman. It was negated by a face mask on Alteron Werner. That really changed the momentum of this game completely. The Bears ended up marching down and scoring on that drive when it should have been an interception, and really changed that momentum. But the issue comes down to is this team is an absolutely different team when Alshon Jeffrey is not on the field. When he is out, even if he's out on the field and he's at 50, 60, 70%, he still changes the way that this team and this dynamic of this offense looks. When he's not out there, this team really struggles. Look at their play calling. Run, short pass, swing pass, wide receiver screen, bubble screen, running back screen, pass, run. It's... I wish I would have done a screenshot of my Twitter feed. It was just irate fans saying, throw the ball more than 5 yards, throw the ball more than 5 yards, throw the ball more than 5 yards. But when Alshon's not out there, is they don't have the ability to scare the defense. They don't have the ability to stretch the field, and they go to really conservative play calling. You think of the wide receivers that caught balls. Mark Mariani caught 2 passes for 32 yards. There was a big 25-yarder and a 7-yard pass. Eddie Royal caught 5 passes for 21 yards. So 5 passes for 21 yards. His long was 14. So you take that away, that 14-yarder, and he's like a yard and a half a catch. He's averaging a yard and a half a catch. And then you have Josh Bellamy, who caught 2 passes for 10 yards. So that's a total of 9 catches by wide receivers for 63 yards. It's like 7 yards a catch. 7 yards you're averaging. Zach Miller's where he's your horse. He had 69 yards himself with 39 yards after the catch. That's your beast right there. Breaking it down, quarterback, I think Jay Cutler played really well within this offense. He had no turnovers. He did have the tip pass, but I can't blame him on that because if you're a defensive lineman and you see what the plays the Bears are calling is short pass, run, is once you see that it's not a run, you know it's going to be a short pass, which is going to have a lower trajectory. Just stick your arms up. When the defensive linemen are the same height as Jay Cutler, and then they put their arms up, that's another 3 feet. So it's really hard to throw underneath the short passes when they've got their arms up, and you add in their little jump. You can't blame the quarterback. That's the reason you have varying play calls, is because you want to prevent things like that. But he did go 20 for 27 with 1 touchdown, no interceptions. His passer rating was over 100. He made some big moves with his legs, both running out of the pocket, and he had that big he ran for 21 yards, including that big first down run. So I was pretty impressed with Jay Cutler. Usually this is the type of game where he gets frustrated and starts trying to make things happen and ends up doing the opposite. Is he really stayed within this Bears offense and entrusted in Adam Gase and the plays he was calling, and it looked good. He ended up with the victory. Running backs, I was really impressed by all 3 running backs. There was a time earlier in the season where I was questioning why they even bothered having Kadeem Carey on this roster, why they didn't cut him and let him try to go somewhere else. But all 3 running backs did an amazing job on Sunday. You had Carey with 2 touchdowns. Langford had 50% of the team's carries and 83 yards, averaging 4.5 yards a carry, and 5 first downs. You had 54 yards by Forte, and he averaged 5 yards a carry. The blocking, they were good on blocking on pass downs. Forte had three catches. Carey had 1 catch for a touchdown. It was a really good day from the running backs. It's the running backs position coach and Adam Gase. They have to be really pleased with that. The offensive line, another really up and down game. I honestly thought that although they could have gotten, the offensive line was a position or a unit that could have gotten better and that they could do something about in the offseason, towards the middle of the season, I was thinking much, much lower on the priority list because they're playing well. You have a left tackle filling in, Leno Jr., who's playing well. Your guard, Slauson's a lock in there. You finally get Grasu in there, and Omame was in several games the Pro Football Focus's best rated offensive lineman, and then Kyle Long, who's probably your most athletic and toughest offensive lineman. You think, all right, well, we starting to figure out who we are and give us another year of gelling together, blah, blah, blah. Low on the totem of replacing guys. But over the past few weeks, there's really been some chinks in the armor on this offensive line. Really up and down game. You had Ducasin for Omame. Long played much better than he has the last several weeks. And I honestly think the big issue with him isn't ability or talent. It's been all mental for him. Is when you start overthinking things, that's when you're going to get beat. He's got to get the instincts built up, and that just takes time. And the guy's only been an offensive tackle for a couple of weeks, and he's supposed to master it. It's going to have to come down to watching film, working, and then just having it become second nature. Slauson was great as usual. Grasu is still struggling a bit, but I honest to God, I'm really seeing progress in Hroniss Grasu's game. He's getting better. He needs to have a great offseason, though. If he does have a really good offseason and comes back next year, goes into a strength program and, works hard in the offseason. He's gonna be the Bears' answer at center. And listen to Olin Kreutz, who, although I think he's kind of a bully jerk, Olin Kreutz does know a lot about playing center in the NFL, and he's impressed with what Grasu's been able to do. I mean, it's a really tough position to come in as a rookie and start at, because you are making the calls and snapping the ball, reading defenses. There's a lot of pre-snap things that you have to go through, and then after you snap the ball, I played center in my younger days, and much lower level, but once you snap the ball, and if you have somebody lined up over the top of you or somebody in the A gap, you've got to be able to react quickly after you snap the ball, and it's hard enough to be able to react when you're not worried about the snap and worried about other things. So it's a lot to do. He's got some work cut out for him, but you're seeing the progress. You're seeing him getting better, and that's always a positive. Is as long as you're moving forward, you're in the right direction. Great run blocking by the Bears. Forte and Langford averaged, around 5 yards a carry. That's always nice to see. Had some good yards, and they were able to pound the ball at the end of the game to keep the clock going. But the big issue is they still have issues with penalties, and they're still giving up way too much pressure on Jay Cutler. I don't know what's happened, but that dynamic has really been an issue. And on the tight ends is Martellus Bennett, who I have some listeners that message me after the shows and stuff, and they think I'm too hard on Martellus Bennett, and that you need to have him on this team next year. And I'm not going to argue with you. He's a terrific blocker. He's a good receiver. He's a big body. He's a tough matchup. But the issue is, you're trying to build a winning team, and Martellus Bennett is a Martellus Bennett first guy. He wants a new contract. If he doesn't get his new contract, you're going to have a big issue on your hand. And we've seen right from the start is Ryan Pace is trying to get rid of bad apples, bad attitudes, and anything related to Jerry Angelo or Phil Emery. And Martellus Bennett's a Phil Emery guy. So I don't see him getting a new contract. So I look at it as, I don't know if Martellus Bennett's going to be back. And I think Zach Miller is a much more dynamic receiving option. He's not nearly as good in the blocking game, but it was brought to my attention of how fragile Zach Miller's been in his career. But I retort with, where's Martellus Bennett right now? He's on injured reserve, done for the season. Where's Zach Miller? He's still playing. So, it's a what's happening right now league. And Zach Miller he's fast, he's big enough, and he's a matchup nightmare because he's big enough where safety's gonna have a hard time covering him, and he's too fast for a linebacker. And the Bears have been utilizing him, and teams know with Alshon Jeffrey out that they've got to focus on Zach Miller, and he's still been able to get it done. Not to the extent that he was earlier in the season, but he still looked great. He's got much better hands than Martellus Bennett. Not as big of a bruiser, but I mean, this game he had 60-some yards rushing. Receiving, 69 yards receiving, and 39 of them were after the catch. So he's not just catching it and going down, he's catching it and taking off for a run. So I really love Zach Miller. He's a great locker room guy. He stays healthy. You can always add a blocking tight end or a secondary tight end. You might as well trade Martellus Bennett and try to get something if he's not going to play for that contract that he's got. Unless you feel comfortable about giving him a new contract. It's up to the Bears. I don't, because he's just going to get upset at that contract somewhere down the road. It's in his family's genes. His brother does it too. And then looking at wide receivers, you can't give him a complete grade. No Kevin White, no Alshon Jeffrey. You're playing with Mark Mariani, Eddie Royal moving up from a slot receiver, and Josh Bellamy. Incomplete. You can't grade him. But it moves on to the Bears organization. Is you see them moving in the right direction. You see they haven't quit. You just see that they're lacking talent. And they're going to have a ton of money this offseason because a lot of money comes off the books. But where do they spend it? I mean, they need an edge rusher. They need another safety. They're going to have to cut. They're going to have to cut Antrell Roll because he's bad. He's hurt, old. They could use another cornerback. They could use a whole new inside linebacking crew. They could use help on the offensive line. They got to re-sign Alshon Jeffrey. And then the big issue comes down to Matt Forte. I don't like... I love the way that Ryan Pace has gone about everything else, but I don't like the way he's dealt with Matt Forte. And to be fair, I don't have inside knowledge. I don't have any of this information. I only get what's publicly made. But Matt Forte is saying he hasn't heard from the Bears. And I haven't heard anything from Ryan Pace. But if that's the situation, I think the Bears organization should sit down with Matt Forte and give them what their plan is. And tell him, if you don't want him back, tell him, we are going to stick with Langford and Carey and go move on from you. And he's a professional. He's going to understand. He's probably going to be upset, but he's going to understand, and he's going to play hard to earn a contract somewhere else. If you plan to re-sign him, let him know so he's not mentally checking out from your organization. Don't go in there and offer him a lowball offer. I understand that he's not going to get the money that he's been on this contract, but you have the room to offer him something fair and be able to bring him back. And I think if you offer him something like a 3-year deal, so it's still low risk, even if you front load it a bit, is you got him, give him some financial security that he wants. You get him for a couple more years because as much as Carey and Langford have looked good, Matt Forte has been an exceptional back for the Bears. I mean, I think he's been one of the. Chicago Bears are loaded with all-time great running backs, and he's right up there with most of them. And I don't see him hitting that 30-year-old wall like a lot of players, just because of the condition he keeps himself in, and he's really not had the carries that he's had in other years this year. But you get one guy nicked up, either Carey or Langford, and then the other one's got to carry the load. And I'm not ready to have one of those guys carry the whole load for me yet. I would love to have Forte back for another 2 or 3 years and just give him less carries, transition slowly into Langford being the man, because I really like Langford, but I am much more comfortable having the 3 good running backs than just 2. But that's just me. Moving on into next week, it's going to be the New Year's weekend, and it's going to be the last game of the Bears season. Playoffs are already out of reach, and they realize that. But they're playing for pride at this point. They're playing for a hometown crowd. They're playing to be 2 games up on what they were last year, ending the season on a positive note, and beating a division rival in the Detroit Lions. A lot of people are bitching, moaning, and hoping they lose just because the potential for a better draft pick. But honestly, they're not going to get one of the top 5 picks. I would much rather have them go out with a victory than a hollow couple of draft picks earlier. And if you're looking at the draft picks, they can't pick any worse than 18th. If they win and strength of schedule and a lot of other things, the worst they can pick is 18. The best they can pick is 9. If they lose that game and a lot of other factors, they could draft 9th. But realistically, I would imagine them to draft around 14 or 15, which still in the middle of the pack. You're still in the hunt for a really good player. Look at some of the really good players that have come out in the last couple of years that are drafted that low. Look at the middle linebacker 2 years ago that the Ravens picked up. he was phenomenal, and he was picked up around 20. So a lot of good picks late in the draft, in the middle of the draft. So no worries about that. I would much rather have them get the win and really build some momentum going into next season. Change the perception of who the Bears are and where they're going for free agents and the coaching staff and the team, but the players that are coming back. But it's still a big hurdle. Bringing Detroit into town. I mean, it's still a big hurdle beating them because they've been playing. They're a playoff team last year, struggled earlier in the season, and they've come back strong. I mean, they went from being the laughingstock of the NFL to the last few weeks. They've really, really played tough. So it's not a gimme game for the Bears. I think it's going to be a tough one. It's all going to come down to the Bears' defensive line. Can they get pressure on Matt Stafford? If they can, I like the Bears' chances. And on the flip side of the ball is, can they establish the run? If the Bears can run as well this week as they did against Lovie Smith and the Buccaneers last week, I really like their chances as well. So it's going to be a good game. There's still things to watch for. You're going to see some evaluation for next year. And honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing David Fales for a quarter or a half and give him a few possessions and see what you have there. Moving on to the Bulls. This team, I keep wanting to hit the panic button because we're getting a little late in the season to be where they're at. I mean, they're too talented of a team on paper to be performing this badly. You have, after the New York Knicks game, you have Jimmy Butler publicly criticizing Fred Hoiberg and he's already called out some of his players. He's the highest paid guy on this team. He's on the max contract. He's supposed to be a team leader, and that's not how you lead. You don't publicly criticize people and put them down, especially when last night he had 5 points against the Raptors. So Jimmy needs to check himself and realize what it is to be a leader. And then you have Joakim Noah and Paul Gasol ripping Jimmy for not keeping everything in house. Then you have John Paxson, who's admitting the other night in a public statement that Fred Hoiberg has a lot of learning to do, which we all know. It's no coach comes into the league and just is lights out already. They've got learning pains. I mean, that's the difference between when you step up into a position you've never been in before. There's always going to be some growing pains, and some people handle it more gracefully than others. But for Pax to publicly say that, and then for Pax to go and have give a lecture to the team, without being there, it's hard. From my perception, it looks like Fred Hoiberg is not really a coach. He's a puppet. And it looks like, it looks weak to the team on the head coach's part that he's got to bring in, it's like the mom saying, well, wait till your father gets home. It really doesn't do anything for the mom's authority because the dad is the disciplinarian. If Fred Hoiberg can't get this team in line himself, you can't be having John Paxson come down and fight your battles. And then you have Jimmy Butler and Derrick Rose with their silent feud that they say it doesn't exist, but it's pretty clear that they don't play well together. Who knows if Derrick Rose can play? I mean, when I was kind of putting some notes together, is Derrick Rose was having a terrible year and no excuses for him, about it. Or, he's a couple years removed from surgeries. He had a whole off season to get better. Maybe taking the broken orbital bone has caused a little bit of a hiccup and caused some fear of him going down low, but he just isn't playing like himself. And then finally, these last couple games, he's starting to resemble old Derrick Rose a little bit against in the win against Oklahoma City Thunder, he looked great. Had a pretty decent night in the loss against Dallas, and then last night against the Toronto Raptors, he looked pretty decent, scoring 25 points. I mean, this team is going to live and die by Derrick Rose. As good as Jimmy Butler is, and as much as I love Jimmy Butler, is if Derrick Rose can't play, this team isn't going anywhere. And he's got to be able to push the ball more. He's got to be able to drive. He can't be scared. He's got to be efficient in his shooting. He's got to be a lot of things that he hasn't been in several years. You have Paul Gasol, who wants out and has already said he's going to opt out of his contract. So who knows what to do with him. And then you have a team that loses to the Knicks, who they should have beat. Then they drop a game to the lowly Nets, and that's got to be a low. I mean, it's the Nets are bad, and you can't be losing to them. You lose to Dallas, but then you have a great win on Christmas Day against Oklahoma City Thunder, and then a really good win against the Toronto Raptors last night. So it's who knows what to think. I mean, at this point, you should be able to establish your offense. I understand that you're missing Mike Dunleavy and that he's gonna alter how things are because he's a really good player and he's big and he can shoot and he can play some team defense. And I mean, Mike Dunleavy, if he comes back healthy, should be able to help this team out. But you have to be able to play without him. It's this. It was a big point of contention last year with fans and the GM that it wasn't the roster, it was the coach that wasn't getting this team over the hump. And a new coaching staff would be able to take this team over the hump. And that hump being LeBron James. But you get rid of Thibodeau and you have a healthy Derrick Rose. What's the excuse now? I don't know. Thibodeau rode these players too hard. Thibodeau was this and that and the other, and they didn't like, the style of coaching. But now they don't like the style of coaching with this coach either. So at what point does it become the general manager and the vice president of the team and the roster that's the issue? This Bulls team has a lot of questions. I mean, and things are going to be smoothed out by winning some games. And like last night, you had Tony Snell coming up big. And if Tony Snell can net you a few wins here and there, and by playing well, that's going to ease the frustrations. But can you count on him playing well night in and night out? That's the big question. I mean, this team is one of the few teams that absolutely knows what they need going forward. They need a wing. And they need to be able to play Bobby Portis more minutes because he was pretty good last night. When he finally got some playing time, he was like a plus 10 or something while he was on the court. But you need playing time for him other than injury time, and you need to bring in a wing player. So who is it that you can trade? This is a team that desperately needs to make a trade, and you don't know if there's a lot of takers out there right now. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Blackhawks. I'm going to talk Blackhawks, and then we'll talk a little White Sox after that. We haven't talked to them in a while. Blackhawks got a lot of inconsistent play. I still think this is a really talented team. I think this is a team that can compete for a Stanley Cup this year. They're just really inconsistent. You have your back-to-back shutouts against Winnipeg and Vancouver. And then you follow it by whitewashing by the Colorado Avalanche. You beat Edmonton, you beat Buffalo, you beat San Jose, but then you lose badly to Dallas and to a subpar Carolina team. I know there's been injuries up and down this lineup, but that's the nature of the beast. You can't blame those. You have to be able to have the depth. You're finally getting Hossa back, and you've had Duncan Keith back for a little bit now, but you lose Marcus Kruger for God knows how long. He's a couple of months with his wrist surgery. But you're starting to see a little bit more production with the top lines. You've got Tavo, Taves, and Hossa on the top line, and then the best line that you've had in all season long is the Panarin, Nisimov, Kane line, and then you're starting to shuffle a lot of players up and down between Rockford and Chicago, and this is the one that's seeming like it might stick. Is you've got Rasmussen, Shaw, and Bickle on the third line, and Deneau, Desjardins, and Garbett on that fourth line, and then your defensive pairings, you got Keith and TVR, Jalmerson and Seabrook, and then your old man slow third pairing of Scuderi and Roosevelt. This team, you've got it's a lot of sloppiness, a lot of tiredness, not a lot of pep in their step per se, pep in their skates. You got poor zone entries. The passes aren't crisp. You're losing 50-50 pucks. But to be honest, a lot of it is, you're not going in there and getting greasy goals. And I know it's easy to say is getting somebody in front of the net, but that's how you score a lot of goals is rebounds, being there, being able, being willing to shoot as soon as you get it open, even if you're far, hoping for a rebound and having somebody there to get the rebound. And then the so-called puck luck. Look at the Carolina games. I can't believe how many chances the Blackhawks had. They were A-plus chances, as Eddie O would say, A-plus chances that they just didn't connect on, whether open nets or whatever it is. They didn't convert, and they ended up losing 2-1. Any one of those goes in, and suddenly this is a whole new ball game, and you're in overtime where you're 3-on-3 and you're the Blackhawks. You gotta like your chances 3-on-3 against Carolina because your skaters are much better than their skaters. And then the other thing is just giving up those dumb goals at the end of periods. That's been a huge problem for the Blackhawks for several years now. It's that they have these mental lapses at the end of periods, and other teams are still going hard for whole 20 minutes, and the Blackhawks are going hard for 19 minutes. That last minute is Crawford's giving up mental lapses. Defense is giving up chances. It's been a big problem, and this year it looks a lot bigger than it has because the offense has been struggling. And the scary thing for me is against Dallas. Dallas is looking like a juggernaut this year. They look. Year after year after year, these last several years, you're so used to the Blackhawks being able to outskate everybody. Even if they don't have as much talent or the other team has this, that, or the other, is the Blackhawks could outskate them. The Blackhawks could always, as a team, outskate the other team, and that's been a recipe for success. And this Dallas team is fast. They looked like the more lively team. They look like the faster team. And they're showing that Patrick Sharp still has a lot of gas left in that tank. And this is a team that really is scary. This looks like one that could beat the Blackhawks, and the Blackhawks had no answer for what they were able to do, and they just whitewashed the Blackhawks. It wasn't even a fair contest. It's a little bit scary for me. I don't know how you boost your speed or what you do, but the Blackhawks aren't physical enough to, what other teams like to do against the Blackhawks is, try to slow down their speed with physical play. But the Blackhawks aren't that type of team, and if they can't match your speed, it's gonna, that's not gonna be a good matchup for the Blackhawks come the playoff times. But we'll see. And then one other thing I want to talk about the Blackhawks is, Shaw got another diving call. No, I'm sorry, never mind. It was they ended up calling a high stick. But speaking to the point is Shaw takes so many dives when he gets hit that he's going to constantly get called for dives because the NHL is trying to crack down on that, and he's a notorious diver. So anything that's even borderline is he's going to get called on that. Shaw's gotta really knock that off, because that's going to be when, come playoff time, that's going to be a critical thing. Is you want to be able to take advantage of those power plays. One is to, regroup and not give, for 2 minutes of not having to play tough defense, and two is a really good scoring chance. And if you're negating one of their penalties with a dive and a flop, that's just dumb. I love Shaw and I love the intensity he plays with, but he's got a reputation around the league as a flopper. He's gonna have to work really hard to break that reputation. The last thing I want to talk about is the White Sox. Off season, everybody's been talking about the Cubs and the Cubs moves that they've made and the big splashes with the John Lackey signing and the Jason Hayward signing. But the White Sox are quietly improving, and they're improving really quickly. I really thought they had a good team last year. Not a great team, but considering their division and what they had, I thought that they would have been a competitive team. But everything that could go wrong with that team really did. They should have been a 500 team last year. I think the play that they had at the end of the year, how they played, was much more indicative of who they should have been in 2015, and I think it's a window into what they could be in 2016. But they were lacking defense. They were one of the worst defensive fielding teams in baseball. They needed another big bopper at bat, and they needed a third baseman. I think they solved a lot of that by trading for Todd Frazier. And I love the move, especially considering how little they gave up to get him. I mean, you gave up Michael Johnson, who's your number 4 or whatever player in your minor league system, and you gave up Trace Thompson. Sure, Trace Thompson hit .295 last year, but it was in 44 games. And if you look, from September 9th to October 8th, so a 1 month period, during that 1 month period at the end of the season, Trace Thompson dropped his batting average by over 100 points in that 1 month. So it's not a good representation. If you look at his 7 years in the minor leagues, he's a career .241 hitter. He strikes out a lot, and you're giving up him and your number 4 prospect for a guy who's 30 home runs, .260 batting average, and 80 plus RBIs. Come on now. That's a silly trade for the Reds. It's a great trade for the White Sox, and I would take that any day of the week. I guess that was the Dodgers that took those guys, but it was a great trade on the White Sox part. Getting Brett Lowry, he had a down year, but he's like a 260, 270 hitter with 10, 15 home runs a year, and anywhere between a 2 and 4 WAR. He's a decent glove. And then there's rumors of adding Alex Gordon. I mean, Alex Gordon, he solidifies some shaky defense with his 4 Gold Gloves. He's got a World Series ring, .270 batting average guy, somewhere in the teen home runs, 50 RBIs a year. I take that. You're looking at a potential lineup here of Adam Eaton, Melky Cabrera, Abreu, Frazier, LaRoche is your DH, either Avi Garcia or Alex Gordon out in right, Brett Lowry, Alex Avila, who could be a big replacement over Tyler Flowers, and then Tyler Saladino playing short. That's not a bad lineup that you have there, especially considering the rotation that you're going to put ahead of them. You've got a lot of different arms that you could go with. Ultimately, I think it's going to end up being Chris Sale, Carlos Quintana, Eric Johnson, Carlos Rodon, and Danks. I mean, I know a lot of White Sox fans aren't going to want to hear that, but I think Danks is going to be the one that gets it. They all want Fulmer, and Fulmer's quickly coming along. I mean, that's part of the beauty of pitching. Taking a college pitcher is he's going to have a shorter road to get to the majors, but I think it's still too soon for him. I think you're going to be looking at him coming maybe late in the season. But I worry about Fulmer because if you look at his mechanics, he just screams Tommy John injury. But I've also said that about Chris Sale, so we'll see. But talking about Rodon really quickly is, if Rodon's got some chinks in his armor with his control issues, his command, but the guy's got an absolute lights out slider. If you look how scouts grade it, it's graded 80 out of 80. That slider's great. He can throw at 3 different speeds. He's got an upper 90s fastball. Rodon, if he gets his command issues straightened out, that 1-2 of Sale and Rodon could be the best 1-2 in baseball, and that would be sick for the White Sox. Huge issue, jump for the White Sox. But overall, I like what the White Sox have done, quietly acquiring guys. They have a pretty weak minor league system and still being able to trade guys from that weak minor league system. I think one of the disadvantages of the Cubs having a really good minor league system is when they're going to make trades, is teams, trading the number 2, 3 man in the Cubs farm system. It's a better player than the 2, 3 man at the White Sox farm system, and they're always going to aim high. They're always going to aim for your, some of your top guys. If the Cubs are saying, our top 5 guys are almost untouchable, maybe number 6, 7, 8 guys are okay, but teams are going to sour because they don't want to go that low in your minor league system. So it really hurts the Cubs. But the White Sox have been able to make some trades and add some key players, and they look like they're still out there making moves. I like the aggressiveness of Rick Hahn, and I like what he's done. I think the White Sox are going to compete this year and surprisingly shock a lot of people. But it would be nice to see the Cubs and the White Sox both have a great year next year. So we'll see how that goes. But that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Thank you guys so much for listening, and if you guys make sure you subscribe, however you're listening, whether iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, hit subscribe, share it with your friends. It's always great. And if you want to hit us up, we will answer any question you have. Swerskisports.com, Facebook.com/SwerskiSports, Twitter @SwerskiSports, and we will answer any question that we get. Thank you guys so much for listening, and until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.